जयमसी भाइ बहिनीहरू, I hope you are enjoying learning about wisdom in Proverbs. I hope you are enjoying searching through and learning many things about wisdom. And I hope you will still continue to learn many more things about wisdom and how to live life. Last week we have studied about rules on how to interpret proverbs and what are the hermeneutical guidelines on how you can study book of proverbs, the sayings. So I hope you have applied all these techniques and all these rules as you are going through and studying through the book of Proverbs. So today we are going to look through the structure and through the verses of and chapters of Proverbs. So we'll now look at structure. So the start of the structure is Proverbs. The first chapter, the first we call this the preamble. It's a start, means start like chapter 1 from verses 1 to 7. Okay, the preamble prepares you to read the book as a whole. It sets the how you are going to read the book as a whole. Okay, so verse 1 it says that the Proverbs is by Solomon, son of David, king of Israel. So this, what we have seen last time, I showed you that not all of them are by King Solomon, but some are by other, compiled by others, but there are sections that are belonging to King Solomon. Okay, but this is the one that sets forth its theme. Verse 2 is attaining wisdom in the purpose. Okay, it says to know wisdom and instruction, to perceive the words of understanding. So its purpose, usko udesha, you will know from verses 3 to 5. It's written here. Verses 3 is to receive the instruction of wisdom, justice, judgment, and equity. You can read it in Nepali, or you can look at it clearly and read from your Nepali Bible. Okay, verse 4 is to give prudence to the simple, to the young man, knowledge and discretion. Verse 5, it says, a wise man will hear and increase learning, and a man of understanding will attain wise counsel. Okay, so this is the purpose of what is the purpose of Proverbs. Okay, so it is all written from verses 3 to 5 is to receive instruction of wisdom and to give prudence to the simple. And a wise man will hear all this instruction, and he will increase his learning. Okay, and we'll go to the next one, and the basic contrast is between wisdom and folly, written in verse 7. So its theological foundation is verse 7, which is the fear of the Lord is the beginning of knowledge, but fools despise wisdom and instruction. So at the same time, verse 6 offers an outline of the book according to its main authors. Proverbs belonging to Solomon and the sayings of the wise. So is verse 6 this says, to understand a proverb and an enigma, the words of the wise and their riddles. Okay, so that is the preamble, the start. We call that like an introduction, like a when you have a something that you like as an appetizer. It's a start. It's a introduction, something like that. Okay, and then next we have the prologue. Okay, so it's from Proverbs 1:8 to chapter 9 verse 18. So It is important to observe that the contrast between attractiveness of wisdom and counter-attractiveness of folly is also contrast between righteousness and wickedness. So there is a contrast between wisdom and folly, which is equivalent to righteousness and wickedness. So wisdom is equivalent, almost equivalent to righteousness in the way they're trying to contrast, and folly is also contrasted with wickedness. So wisdom and folly is a contrast. दुईटा उल्टा छ, बुद्धि र मूर्खता, अनि अर्को धार्मिकता र दुष्टता. These are the contrast between this. This contrast become the predominant theme in the poems of the prologue. So these are the poems in the prologue. There are many. Remember, we said this is more on poems. So Kavita. So I was asking you last time, what are the two main illustrative themes there? So the two main illustrative themes there are easy money. So it's talking about easy money, how the money was taken. It was taken by corrupt means. So it's not through honest means. They are taking easy money, and the other one is easy sex, being seduced by another man's wife. Okay, you are being attracted by another man's wife. So at the end of the prologue, wisdom and folly are personified as women calling the young men to follow them. So wisdom is represented as a woman, as a person, okay, as a woman calling the young men to follow them. It's like it is represented as a woman calling young men to follow her, because she has all the goodness, okay, not to for them not to fall into folly or foolishness, so that they won't fall into wickedness. Okay, so therefore the central section of these poems in chapters 5 to 7 admonishes or warns the young man to a lifelong love of his wife. That's found in chapter 5, 15 to 19. And not to be tempted by a wayward wife, meaning a wife who doesn't, who is not loyal, and serving as a comparison, analogies for loving wisdom rather than folly in chapters 8 to 9. Hence, these poems are primarily in the form of admonitions or in the form of warnings. So most of these sections, these 5 to 7 and 8 to 9, are mostly warnings. So we'll go one by one. Here it says here, lesson 1 is an interlude 1. This is warning and rebuke from chapter 1, verses 8 to 33. So the first introduction, verses 8 to 9, includes both father and the mother. Did you notice that in verses 8 to 9, it talks about both father and mother, and especially also at the Proverbs 10 verse 1, where it includes both father and mother. Okay, here we can see mothers stand in equal footing with fathers in teaching their children. That's in Proverbs 31:26. Israel's sages, or the wise men, are cultural revolutionaries in elevating mothers to teach the national spiritual heritage to their children. The father's command to the son, "Do not forsake your mother's teaching," Proverbs 1:8, seems unexceptional until we realize that the mother is not mentioned as a teacher in ancient Near Eastern literature. This is the author is Bruce Waltke, and what he's trying to say is, did you notice that in Proverbs verses chapter 1, verse 8 and 9, what does it start with? It mentions that, okay, let me read. Okay, it says, My son, hear the instruction of your father, and do not forsake the law of your mother, for they will be a graceful ornament on your head and chains about your neck. So you can see here that it is mentioned that not to forsake the law of your mother as well. And then in Proverbs chapter 10 verse 1, it says here, a wise son makes a glad father, but a foolish son is the grief of his mother. So both father and mother are mentioned here, and which is very unique or very special in during those ancient Near East literature, because in the ancient Near Eastern literature, the mother was not never mentioned there. Waila una ko bau mate bani ko una tyo wile ko una ko tyo bela ko teaching una ko during those time. So for here in Proverbs, they emphasize na baura ama Dubai भनेको छ मदर पनि एकदम महत्त्वपूर्ण छ उनीहरूको सिकाउने कुरा. Okay, so you will see also that this lesson is a strong warning against the enticement of wicked men who plot against others for easy money. Okay, so there is a strong warning. एकदम यो दुष्ट मानिस उनीहरूलाई एकदम दुष्टलाई पैसाको कारणले के अरे खराब काम गर्नुहुन्छ. So you will see that in verse 20 to 33, personified wisdom speaks. Means the wisdom is like a person. So it is it says personified wisdom speaks, rebuking not the son, but the simple ones and mockers, those who would entice the son away from his parents' wisdom. Her rebuke describes what will happen to this kind of people. Okay? So it's all written here. So then we go to lesson 2, safeguard against the wicked, in chapter 2 verses 1 to 22. So here we can see there are 4 parts. Okay, verse 1 to 4. And let's look at, while I'm explaining, please get out your Bible and look at it and read it in your language, in Nepali or in Hindi, so you can understand. Okay, so there are 4 parts. Verses 1 to 4. What does it say here? It urges the son to seek wisdom. He wants the son to get wisdom, to look for wisdom. छोरालाई बुद्धि नै खोज्नु. And in verses 5 to 6, then he will, why does he have to seek it? So that then he will understand the fear of the Lord and find the knowledge of God. So I'm going to ask you, what is the fear of the Lord? What does it mean that he can understand the fear of the Lord? And because of understanding fear of the Lord, he can find the knowledge of God. So what really is the meaning of fear of the Lord? So then in verse 7 to 8, so if he understands the fear of the Lord and find the knowledge of God, he will in turn, this fear of the Lord will protect his way. And verses 9 to 11, and it will enter his heart to guard him. So these are what it says about understanding the fear of the Lord and getting wisdom. So here again, in the next verses, it says, the 2 main ways a son need protection. So what are the ways a son would need protection? First, from verse 12 to 15 is from the wicked men. And then from verses 16 to 19, from the wayward wife, from the unfaithful wife, not loyal wife. And then so the son returned to his walk in the paths of the righteous. So now we go to lesson 2, 3, and 4 is the value of wisdom from chapter 3, 1 to 35. So it is the value, buddhi ko mulya. So what is the value of wisdom? So lesson 3 says, from verses 1 to 10, chapter 3, it says, God's promises and the son's obligation. Okay? So परमेश्वर को प्रतिज्ञा and छोरालाई के गर्नुपर्ने. And then verses 3 to 4 is love and faithfulness. Talking about love and faithfulness is, if you have love and faithfulness, is equal to favor with God and people. And then for verses 5 to 6, trusting in the Lord will equal to having straight paths. And then verses 7 to 8 is humility, and you will have, when you are humble, when you have humility, you will have good health. And then in verses 9 to 10 talks about tithes and offerings, and you will have abundant crops. Okay. In lesson 4, there are 3 poems that highlight the value of wisdom. Mulya, buddhi ko mulya kyo. So note the 6-2-6 couplet arrangement. So the 6 couplet, you can see 6 couplets, 6 2-lines verses. So verses 13 to 18 is its blessings and value. Blessed at the beginning and the end. Then again, you can see verses 9 and 19 and 20. So at the end, let's see verses 13 to 18. You can see there is a tree of life. So it says, she is a tree of life to those who take hold of her, and happy are all who retain her. So you can see from here that verses 19 to 20, it talks about the creation, taking from the tree of life theme. Remember the tree of life that in Genesis is talking about the tree of life. So from the theme of tree of life, it talks about the creation from verses 19 to 20. The Lord by wisdom founded the earth. By understanding he established the heavens. By his knowledge the depths were broken up, and clouds dropped down the dew. So it's talking about creation. And then from verses 21 to 26, again it goes like it is blessings again. So first blessings here, and then again blessings again. Now taking the theme of peace and prosperity taken from verse 2. You can see from verse 2, what does it say? Verse 1 and 2, it says, My son, do not forget my law, but let your heart keep my commands, for length of days and long life and peace they will add to you. So it goes back and talks about the peace that was mentioned in the start of chapter 3. Okay, and the lesson 4 ends with verses 27 to 35 by offering negative admonitions or warnings in connection to lesson 3. So it is giving warning towards all this on the lesson 3. So now we go to lesson 5, the supremacy of wisdom. Chapter 4, 1 to 27, Sarvaksha, Buddhi ko Sarvaksha. Lesson 5, verses 1 to 9, talks about the family's heritage of wisdom and urges the son to continue it. Okay, so they talks about that the family has wisdom and urges the son to continue it. Urges the त्यो छोरालाई अझै बुद्धिमानको बाटोमा हिँड्नुस्. And in lesson 6 is on verses 10 to 19, urges the son to avoid the wrong way, the way of wickedness. So he should avoid the wrong way. Galti ko bato na hini. Ani dusta ko bato na hini. So lesson 7 verses 20 to 27, it urges the son not to go off the right way, the way of righteousness. Tik bato man na morni, modni, ani dharmikta ko bato hinus. So lesson 8 is warnings against adultery, folly, and wickedness. So that is from chapter 5, verses 1 to chapter 6, verse 19. So again, it repeats from chapter 2, 16 to 19, warnings against adultery, bebichar. Okay? It's chapter 5, 3 to 14, and verses 20, which also includes a warning to be faithful in marriage. Biyama ekdam viswas yogya no parne. And this is followed by a further warning against the wicked, verses 21 to 23, and against two kinds of folly. The two kinds is you can see from chapter 6, 1 to 5, and also warnings against from being very lazy. The other one is you are being securing strangers, being giving safety to strangers, giving guarantees to strangers. That's in verses, all these verses written here. And it concludes with a final warning in the prologue against the wicked, which is in chapter 6, 12 to 19. So there's warning again against the wicked, the dusta sanga. Then lesson 9, you have further warning against adultery. So you can see this keeps on. This is a topic that has been repeated and repeated, which means it's very important. Bebichar. Okay, 6:20 to 35. So notice how this introduction begins as the others did in verses 20 to 23, but ends on the warning note in verses 24 to 25 that will then be explained. So there are three series of couplets here, verses 26 to 29, and verses 30 to 33, and 34 to 35. So if you can go and look at it, those are couplets in verses 26 to 29 in chapter 6. Which you will see it. And then there will be again 30 to 33. Then another one will be 34 to 35. Okay. And then you have the lesson 10 and interlude 2. The unfaithful wife and wisdom's call. So chapter 7, 1, 8 to 36. So this final lesson is similar to lesson 8. Okay, there's lesson 8 against the adultery. And then and there is a wisdom call that is written there. So it is focusing on the seductive tactics of the unfaithful and adulterous wife. Note that she is used as a comparison for the invitation of folly at the end of the prologue. Okay, you can look up these verses, chapter 9, verses 13 to 18, and cross-reference with chapter 9 and 18 with chapter 7 and 27, and this is similar also, chapter 9, verse 14 with chapter 5, verse 8. Okay, so it is used this adulterers or bebichar, or the one who is not Viswas Yogya ko Srimati, is like a invitation of the Murkata. In there, it's like the Murkata is inviting you. So notice how the second interlude, chapter 8, 1 to 36, is similar to the first one, 1:20 to 33, followed by the warning against wicked men. So now wisdom offers self-praise to the simple and foolish in verse 5. So take a look at verse 5. So it says, it recognizes her value both to kings and the prosperous in verses 32 to 36. Okay, so she steps into the father's shoes and invites the sons to watch daily at her doorway. So this is talking about wisdom. So and lastly, we have the epilogue in the rival banquets of wisdom and folly. So you can see that in chapter 9, verses 1 to 18. So this is a Boj from the two, the Woody and Murkata. So verses 1 to 6 and 13 to 18 it begins and ends with Nimti, or how do you call, invitation to all who are simple to eat at the houses of wisdom and folly. So which one would you go? So they are saying it. So folly mimics wisdom and echoes the seduction of the unfaithful wife. So the folly is compared to those who, the unfaithful wife, the seduction, or the trying to attract of the foolish from the unfaithful wife. Okay, so the folly copies, mimics means copies the wisdom and echoes the seduction of the unfaithful wife. Okay, is trying to attract, but actually it is the unfaithful wife. Okay, verses 7 to 9, 10 to 12, two short lessons contrasting the wise and the mockers. So all of this to lead to reading the Proverbs with diligence and thoughtfulness. So all this one from the first part, chapter 1 to chapter 9 to 1 to 18, all these warnings and all the things that we have discussed is an encouragement to, so that the son will continue to read the Proverbs with diligence and thoughtfulness. I want to talk about just a little bit about this. In the recent times, it is still very prevalent, or adultery is still very much here and a very much danger in this, even in these times. So, baby child, this is just, I want to show, this is a long time ago, 2016 already. But you can see that here, this is a Philippine newspaper headline, and it says here that leaked data that big majority of adultery website users in Philippines are male. Okay, so I'm sure this is not only applicable in Philippines, or even also it's a big majority, but I'm sure also female also has, and also now, especially now online, there are many dangers that is online. So I want to give warning on this one, especially now you're all on online classes, so you need to be very careful on this, and I hope you will learn from it. So here there are some statistics that is from that same newspaper. It says 22% of married men have strayed at least once during their married lives. So, and 14% of married women have had affairs at least once during their married lives. So these are showing that even what the Bible says a long time ago is even still, it's happening now. What it is saying, that there are unfaithful wives, unfaithful men as well. So we can see how the Proverbs, how it is still happening today. Also, I would like to warn also here that influence of internet pornography on children. So 90% of 8 to 16-year-olds have viewed porn online, mostly while doing homework. So we have to be very careful on this. And influence of these are the average age of first internet exposure to pornography is 11 years old, and influence of all this, then the largest consumer of this is 12 to 17 age group. So we have to be very careful. So we have to be protecting our kids or whoever are in with you, or even yourselves. You have to be very careful of all this, because um, here you can see 1 in 5 children ages 10 to 17 have received a sexual solicitation over the internet. So there are many dangers on the internet that you have to avoid. So what can we say here? What is the start of it is usually it starts when they are exposed to these things, that Satan is using all these ways to start and to help you become unfaithful. So what can we say? What is adultery? What is bebichar? So does adultery have to include sexual intercourse? I don't think so. So you can look up in the Bible what are the ones written there, and what are some of the causes of adultery. So you can look up and see there are many reasons and of part, and you can try to find out what are the causes. And one of them is the when you are exposed very early to this online or this pornography. So, and then strange women. So the basic meaning is strange or foreign. She's not necessarily a foreigner. She's a woman outside the covenant community because of the lifestyle she has chosen. So you have seen here in the Proverbs is talking about the woman who is not living according to what God wants, according to the community. So here is written here in the strange woman in chapter 5, verse 3. So this is in Hebrew, and her words sound so appealing and persuasive. So it sounds so appealing and attractive, and that it sounds so like you want to be convinced. Okay, and this strange woman indicates a prior cause. So these are that it has means this is a prior cause, means there is it is caused by something before that once made her become like that. So other instances of the English word is in chapter 6:26, she is literally the wife of a man, which is parallel to a harlot. Harlot, she pursues her victim. She runs after her victim. She has no, she finds nothing wrong to run after her victim. So you have to be very careful. Okay, and she forgets the covenant of her God. Okay, so she forgets what she has promised to her God. Okay, so all these are about adultery. So I hope you will be very careful about adultery. This is a very sensitive subject, but also very very dangerous to have in your lives, because it will destroy your life. So we will go back to our assignment. What will be our assignment for you this week? So your readings for this week is Proverbs 22:17 to up to. So from chapters 22 to 17 up to chapters 24 to 34. So now that you have read Proverbs through many times, so I want you to again think about What is wisdom according to what you have learned from your study of Proverbs? And can unbelievers have wisdom? You have to defend your answer according to your definition of wisdom and what you mean by wisdom. The first time I asked you about what is wisdom, and I want you to think again, and after you have read through Proverbs, what do you think is wisdom? And tell me and reason out if unbelievers can have wisdom as also. Number 2, so you have also now read through Proverbs many times. So what have you found out about the importance of the fear of God? Okay, what does it mean to have fear of God? The last time you have written an assignment on fear of God, but many of you have just given me the benefits, but not the explanation of fear of God. So you have to tell me what is the meaning of fear of God and what is its purpose and how you can get it. So you can look up outside sources and research on where fear of God is mentioned in the Old Testament as well. You have to look it up. Okay, and where are the verses? What books of the Bible in the Old Testament that mentions the fear of God? And what does it say about fear of God? What does it mean, fear of God? And explain how all these verses on fear of God explanation, how all these verses, the explanations of this add to your understanding of the fear of the Lord is the beginning of wisdom. Remember, this is an important part of your Proverbs paper. The first part of your paper is about the fear of the Lord. Okay, and then thirdly is you research in depth, just as you have done in social issues research paper, on why you are interested in a certain topic, and you will look it up in depth and look through all the verses in Proverbs and discuss the 2 topics that I will be giving you. I will have approved and use the hermeneutical guidelines and rules. What type of poetry techniques and figure of speech was used, and summarize your findings. Remember, I have given you all the rules and what are used to interpret, and what is it? Is it a contrast? Is it comparing to something? So you need to tell me those, and what are your findings on it. So, and number 4 is what are the topics in these verses, and group the verses according to topics. Remember, I asked you to, again, this is always a part of your assignment. You're reading his Proverbs 22:17 to 24 to 34. So all these verses, all inside all these verses, you have to group them again into topics and explain each topic. Last time, remember, you have the previous list in all your past assignments. You can add up to that. And this time you have to, again, explain all the topics that are inside, that are in these verses. Okay, and finally, again, I always ask you, what can you learn from these verses and how will you apply it in your life? Please give specific practical applications, meaning, remember, I have taught you on how that practical application, not just what you plan to do, but what you are going to do about it. What did you learn from these verses? And what will you do with all that you have learned? Okay? So note that all your assignments are in preparation to helping you write your papers. Okay, if you have done in-depth research and your assignments thoroughly, you will do well in your papers. So all this I'm asking you to do is to help you in your papers, Proverbs paper that you will have to submit. Please check the date that you have to submit. Okay. Oh, this is all for this week.